Greetings, all Shardvixen, and today is Saturday, the 12th. I love it because I have to look, because I don't remember. I'm not going to be as close to the camera today because my shoulder's really bothering me all the way out. It's just like here and down into here, so I'm just going to kind of sit here. I did want to show you. Okay, so the last month or so, well, right before Christmas, and then I got sick, and then right after Christmas, I've been redesigning the area in which I do my vlogs, and I do my, give me a second, it's gonna come. I've been having cognitive problems the last 2 days, so bad, words just disappear. My setup for videoing, animation, and then of course crafting. So I've gotten one of my animation tables done. I'm gonna be making another one, but what I've done is I've actually made, and I don't know if you can't see that way. Okay, if we go this way, this is what's left of 100% mess. This is 25%. It's almost done. Almost done. I'm so excited. And then this is now my creative corner. Can we see it? Yeah, this is my creative corner. See, so I have my listing of things I need to do up on there, and then I have my schedules up there. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. And my living room is looking really spectacular. I can actually, people could come over now, which my son's really excited because he wants to do a D&D thing. All right, so today is Know Thyself, and it's about Salvador Dali. I'm going to give you a little bit of back history about Salvador Dali. I'm not sure how many people know him, and I might be pronouncing his name incorrectly. I have notes I have to look at because, like I said, I've had nothing but problems with my cognitive today. So, give me just a second while I... Oops, excuse me. That was a burp. While I get the notes in order. So this is a new part of Know Thyself I'm adding. It's called the artist or art part, because art is a big, sorry, right in here, my eyebrows are really bothered. They're stinging. I don't know why. Fibromyalgia does that. Things just sting. Weird, strange times. My foot was bothering me yesterday. So, I feel like I can't see. Art, of course, is the representation of philosophies and thoughts and ideas and realism and fantastic things. Hang on a second. I had to mute my computer. My phone's not muted though, so it might go off at some point in time. My daughter usually calls me about this time now. I did not get my vlog going in the morning like I wanted. Alright, so hopefully this is all going to make sense to you. Anyway, so art for me, though, is really about what I like, how it reflects to me, and not how it reflects to society. I like things that probably other people don't like, and then I don't like things that other people say you should like. Like, that was the whole problem when I went to school. When I went to school, well, in high school, of course, they tell you what you're supposed to like. These are the classics. This is what you like. And here's why you like them, because they have such an impact in our history. And then you become pretentious. People become pretentious. And this is just my thought alone on this. People become pretentious by dropping hints about artwork that everyone's supposed to know about if they're part of that crowd. And I like to just look at artwork. I've been to museums all the time and just kind of, go through the museum and have people come up to me and say, oh, isn't this the most fabulous picture you've ever seen? And I'd be like, no. And then they get angry because if you say no, then obviously you're not as smart as they are, or you're not as enlightened as they are. And I don't believe that. I think art is pretty much how it makes you feel. And if you like something by Pollock, even though it makes absolutely no sense to somebody else, then you should like it. But you should not assume ever that people who say they know they're talking about art are actually talking about art. They're talking about their perception or cultural society's perception of art, but not really about the artist. And a really good reviewer will say that they're reviewing what they think the artist is saying, not what the artist is really saying. Because unless the artist makes a comment about it, you're never going to know. Okay? That's the same way with writing. It's the same way with poetry. It's the same, all of that. Because we all have, as I've talked about many, many times, in our perceptions are based on our experiences. They're based on who we are, where we live, what gender we are, what sex we are, how we perceive the world, how we talk, what words. So everything that has anything to do with perception is a direct individual concept. So that's what I'm going to say about art, about what I like. So this is all based on me, not based on what anybody else has to say. So there are 3-4 types of art I particularly like. I mean, there are art pieces from other that I like. Like I do like classical. I do like Romanesque. I do like, stuff like Leonardo da Vinci. I can't remember what he's actually in. I do like those kind, okay? But for the most part, if I was to pick periods of time in history that I most like, it would be symbolism from the Victorian age, because they were so wrapped up in norms of society. They were so very rigid and stuck, but at the same time had this deep underneath that would ooze out through their artwork. So, I really like that. I like surrealism, sorry, because it has that 1 foot in reality and 1 foot out of reality. Or more like 1 foot in reality and 1 foot in the fantastic minds of mythical stuff. Okay, I like, and not just mythical, but just weird perceptions of how they see things. And then Dadaism, which is a big movement, prior to World War I, in protest of World War I, where the most important parts of the aspect of it was to be nonsense, irrational, and protesting. And so those are the ones, and then of course fantastic art. So fantastic art is a big giant genre that has to do with anything that's mythical, not nonfiction. So your ghosts, your vampires, your dragons, and even your space. Speculative, as they call it now, speculative fiction. Okay, so that you know that. Now, Salvador Dali, of course, is a surrealist. He had his start, he kind of studied under Cubism, which is made famous by Picasso. I don't really like Cubism. It's interesting to look at, but it feels very harsh at times. Not very, for me, not very flowing. Like, not very, I don't know, it's just not as pleasing to look at for me. Some of their colors are alright, but for the most part, it's not like I know who Pablo Picasso is, and if I was to look up some Cubism, I would kind of know it was Cubism, just like the pointism, that point work they do, I would know that was. And then I'd have to be reminded of others, like modern art and things like that, and postmodern, and now, interesting enough, I guess they couldn't think of anything else to call it, there's postmodern. PP modern, which is where we're at now in our movement of art. So Salvador Dali, actually, I was exposed to him in I want to say probably I knew of him in high school, because I remember a teacher talking about his pretense of memories, which has to do with the melting watches. But I think that was because we had a conversation about the philosophy of perception, and that's why. But I didn't really, it's not a strong memory in my head. So when I first came upon Salvador Dali, was in art history, in 1984, 1986. Between that time when I went to school, I was a freshman, sophomore in junior college. And I took art history, which was a requirement for an art degree that I was trying to get. I ended up dropping out of school about 1986. I didn't go back to school until 1990, I think. And then I was doing a computer program, not a art program, because I was told I was not very artistic, which is I'm sure they don't say it that way anymore, but then they didn't want to give you any delusions, because being female and trying to get, into the art field probably didn't work as well for most of the art teachers that I met, though women were more likely to be artistic, I guess. Though it was mostly men that I had in college to begin with. But in 1989, well, in the 1980s, I was collecting as I've said, I've collected comic books, sorry. And one of the comic books I started collecting, I have to say probably 1987, 1988, was the Doom Patrol. It's a DC comic thing, and it has its roots in, it's by Grant Morrison, and it has its roots in surrealism and artistic things, philosophy, protest, stuff like that. Those things that I always talk about as those things that happen when you get a bunch of people together who are intellectuals. That's what they call them, intellectuals. I don't like to call them intellectuals. I think that's very pretentious, and I love the word pretentious. I do. But it's also kind of arrogant to assume that if a bunch of people got together and were watching the Super Bowl, that they couldn't have a conversation about art. You could. I have. But then I just know interesting people. I don't call them intellects. I just call them people that are interested in, I always say academics, I think. People are more interested in those stupid things that really have no place in your life, because the world on a whole is not created to embrace the idea of thinking about deeper thoughts. It's not. I mean, your day is usually filled with stuff to keep you occupied from not thinking about deeper thoughts. Even though we kind of, on the academic side, we encourage it. On the spiritual side, we don't. So that's kind of society's like that. They got like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I started reading Doom Patrol, and there were these bad guys, this group against Doom Patrol called the Brotherhood of Dada. Originally, they were the Brotherhood of Evil, but they changed their name because they didn't believe they were good or evil. They were just existed. And they were kind of a philosophy evil. It was like, and Grant Morrison, who I might talk about in a vlog at some point in time, is very much into that. He's very much into exploring the things that intellects, academic people, or people that are searching for the truth, seekers of the truth, would be interested in. They'd be looking behind the closed doors. The whole, stay away from that curtain, Dorothy, there's nothing behind it kind of thing. Okay, so because I was so interested in it, I had remembered briefly, I think at the time, that I kind of knew what Dadaism was, but I had to look it up. And Dadaism is a really interesting cultural movement. And now a cultural movement means that a whole bunch of people all kind of get together and create where the society accepts this movement of change from the predecessor of how things were doing it. So if you had Cubism at one point in time, going on, because I think Cubism is a little earlier than Surrealism, which is and Dadaism is before Surrealism. You have these movements of how we do things and how we think and the things we're trying to process. And Dadaism kind of wanted to go the other opposite way than most. They wanted to look at things in a nonsense, abstract kind of way. They're a little different than symbolism, but sometimes you'll see symbolism. But it really is the most weird, irrational things that you could possibly think that don't seem to make any sense, but had some sense in the artist's mind, which some people could argue that was the way it was for most artists. So, you know, from Dadaism, now some people argue, and if you, I'll have a list of all the different references. Some places argue that Salvador Dali started in Dadaism. Technically, the way his learning curve, where he was at in the time period, is he would have had some exposure to Cubism, then into Dadaism, and then Surrealism would be at the peak of his time period. And you can see bits and pieces of the things in that, you know, for him. But the very first picture I remember of Salvador Dali, even though I know I was exposed to the pretense of, and I think I'm saying that right, the pretense of memories, which is the dripping watches one. Even though I was exposed to that, I didn't really ever like that one. So my very first one, of course, is the Geopolicus child who watches the birth of man. And I liked it because has a lot of heavy symbolism in it. You know, there's an egg in it, and this person is crawling out of it, and then you have this other being who's kind of watching it. So like this being is the old movement, and the new movement is opening up. I'm sure that Salvador Dali had a whole idea of it, and if you ever read any of his works and you go and look at any of his stuff, you will realize that he has this really deep need to explore himself through painting, which is great because that's what most people do. I don't draw per se that way. I draw about things around me more than things in me, and then I do actual copy work, which is I see something that's pretty and I just want to reproduce it, or I see something that's kind of interesting and I want to reproduce it as something. It doesn't have, a lot of my artwork for me doesn't have that really huge inner connection. There are some pieces though. So the picture of Shardvixen is like that. The picture, I put another picture up of Shardvixen, which is a more symbolic type of style that's on my new channel that I'm creating, that I told you guys about, the third one. I changed its name to Wild Rhyme Time Studios, and that will have the animation, the stories on it. That's really going to be the end place for you to go. It's not going to be on Grammy Plays Games, though you might see some of that. When we're talking about Salvador Dali, though, and my connection to him, is that it's more about what I see in the picture and how the picture made me feel. So some of his pictures make me feel more so. I love that one, the one with the creature, the person coming out of the egg. Salvador Dali actually died in 1989, and that was the same year that the Dadaism came out in Doom Patrol. I'm sure that there probably was some connection there, but I didn't really look for it. If you guys want to, it's I think the first time they talk about it is number 26. I'm not plus positive, but you know, you could look it up on the internet if you're curious about it. Let's see here now. The other picture I like by Salvador Dali, really, the birth of man is my favorite because that whole image, someone made a sculpture of that, and it was for a long time. I used it in social media to represent, you know, the things that I thought about and things. That pretentious of memories, a preference of memories, I guess. I'm not sure what to call it. I'm going to have to look it up. Has a connection to unconsciousness and Freud teachings, which is probably why I don't like it much. It always gave, when I looked at it, I always got this sense of fear. I'm not sure why, but that's just me, I guess. But, so, the reason I want to talk about artists in general, not just Salvador Dali, I'll be talking about different types as I go through. A lot of them will be more fantastical artists, more from the modern time period. But it's because art has a way of being very important to us, even when we don't go out and buy artwork, or we don't go out and buy pictures, or we don't, you know, go to museums or whatever, that still pops up in various places because other people will also be connected to it. So artists by nature like to push the envelope of that door of what was reality to what's not. Even when you look at more factual kind of paintings, there's still a part of a perception coming from the artist, how the artist sees it. And it gives us an enlightenment look of how each person from one to another can change a view of something and perceive it differently. There'll be a lot of artists I will never ever talk about because I'm just not interested in them. I'll know about them, but they're just not my thing. But if you want to share in the comments down below or on my Discord and have a chat, we have a channel called Doodles, which is everybody's artwork. You can pop in there and say, I really want to talk about, I don't know, Pollock. And we'll say, sure. I don't know that many people are interested in his work, per se. But, or Andy Warhol. I wasn't a big Andy Warhol either. Always remind me of Woody Allen for some strange reason. I don't know why. But anyway, so that's it for Know Thyself. I don't like to think of myself as being pretentious. I do know things because I've gone to school, but I really want to make it so everybody understands. So if you don't understand some, ask me and I'll let you know. But as far as art goes, it's what you like and how you see it. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I might argue about the meaning just because it's fun, but I won't argue about how you like it or don't like it. Alright, so that's it. I'm out of here. Next week is, what does the vixen say? I don't know. Dip, 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 dip. I don't think so. Alright. Peace.